Good evening, friends. We start tonight with the fever-pitched conversation over fake news. The Washington Post has distanced itself from claiming many sites named in an article it published last month pushed fake news. The article named more than 200 media organizations in the United States, accusing them of pushing Russian propaganda. One of the sources the newspaper used even pushed for prosecuting those outlets under the Espionage Act. RT's Alexei Yaroshavsky explains tonight.
On November 24th, many journalists and bloggers, some of them award-winning, both conservative and liberal, woke up to a new reality, the one in which they were nefarious agents of the evil Kremlin propaganda machine, as stated by one of the country's biggest newspapers. The Washington Post article referred to a list of media organizations wittingly or unwittingly echoing the Russian propaganda, including outlets with, let's put it mildly, different views, like conservative Drudge Report, left-leaning Truth Dig, most certainly WikiLeaks, and even NakedCapitalism.com, the site which was named by the Time magazine in top 25 financial blogs in 2011. All on the same list which called for investigation and prosecution of those outlets under Espionage Act. The article created a lot of backlash and forced a retraction from the Post. It said in a note, among many other things, that it did not name any of the sites, does not itself vouch for the validity of Proper Not's findings regarding any individual media outlet. Not often do you see a major newspaper distance itself that much from its source. The Post was even forced into a correction regarding our network. A previously published version of this story incorrectly stated that Russian information service RT has used Crooked Hillary hashtag, pushed by then Republican candidate Donald Trump. In fact, while other Russian information service Sputnik did use this hashtag, RT did not. Yeah. Who needs fact-checking when the story can sell so well? And let's not even talk how blacklisting journalists smells like McCarthyism. Let's talk about the sources for that Washington Post fiasco. The prime one is Proper Not, the website run apparently by Ukrainian-American group, as evidenced by this tweet with a typical Ukrainian slogan in Cyrillic. The group is anonymous, it refuses to identify itself, and that alone would be enough for any credible journalist to steer clear of it when it comes to using such as a source. But it's far more interesting with the only other source Washington Post referred to, a fellow at the Foreign Policy Research Institute, the think tank founded by this man, Robert Strauss, who used to serve as U.S. ambassador to NATO at the height of Cold War. He never made his feelings towards Russia and the Soviet Union a secret. In a 1961 book, he wrote, even at a moment when the United States faces defeat because, for example, Europe, Asia, or Africa have fallen to communist domination, a sudden nuclear attack against the Soviet Union could at least avenge the disaster and deprive the opponent of the ultimate triumph. In the times when Mr. Strauss was not advocating for a nuclear strike on Moscow, he was heavily preoccupied with Soviet propaganda. His 1959 article in the New York Times was called "Why Russia is Ahead in Propaganda," in which he wrote, "The only way for America to protect itself from Russian propaganda is to massively increase its propaganda warfare budgets and close the propaganda gap." Sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Russia today can be heard in English. Do we have an equivalent that can be heard in Russian? That's a pretty expensive proposition.
What makes this very dangerous is that the New York Times article came just a few years before the Cuban Missile Crisis, still the closest that the world ever got to a nuclear war, and some 8 years before the FPRI had a little atomic explosion of their own, when the very same New York Times revealed the institute was secretly funded by the CIA, a revelation that led to student protests and the think tank removing itself from Thansk campus. Back to 2016, a loud assertion by Washington Post citing only a shady, evidently pro-Ukrainian group, which hardly makes it objective, and a think tank, founder of which is known for his desire to nuke Russia. It also spread like fire thanks to retweets like these from Director of Center for American Progress, Neera Tanden. All of this happens, ladies and gents, when you thought that the mainstream media outlets could not have possibly embarrassed themselves more following the coverage of the 2016 presidential campaign and its result. And it begs the question, who exactly needs to wake up? Alexei Yaroshavsky, RT, reporting from Washington, D.C.
Joining me tonight to talk more about this is attorney and media critic Lionel of Lionel Media. Lionel, good to have you with us tonight. All right,
Yes,
just right out there, your thoughts on what you just saw and what the Washington Post has done.
When you have no idea, first of all, of the history of Operation Mockingbird and how we, this great country, could compete with some of the best propagandists of all time, number one. Number two, it is the inherent goal of every country, every ideology to spread its word via propaganda, aside from that. But number three, and I'm thinking as a lawyer, reading this as an indictment, when you claim that this group, this anonymous group that the Washington Post distances itself from, but yet maintains the article, says basically, we do not in any way provide any statement regarding the veracity, the validity, the verity, the accuracy of this group, nor do we have any idea of what constitutes propaganda and the like. When you have this, in this era of fake news, and you don't even remove yourself from it, you acknowledge it, but yet you maintain a connection to it. I mean, this is the Washington Post. Does anybody have any idea of the journalistic malpractice? You talk about indicting people, but Ed, while this term fake news has been bandied about, the irony of ironies, that what this is
Lionel,
fake
whether
news.
it's fake news or not, the newspaper took someone else's material and presented it as if it was their own without the disclaimer when the article was printed. And so doesn't that make them complicit in all of this? I mean, this website and this organization that put all this together did a masterful job of duping the Washington Post into printing this to get this kind of exposure, but also to do the irreversible damage on people's reputations in the process. What about that?
And in its letter of authenticity, so to speak, again, Ed, the fact that they don't just expurgate or erase this article from whatever, but they tell you, we can't validate this. These people are anonymous, prop or not. We don't know who they are. We can't vouch for this. Oh, but by the way, if you'd like to read the article again, here it is. This is the Washington Post. Ed, I can't believe that this is done deliberately. I can't believe that somebody, that an organization could be this negligent.
Well, negligent also, and such wrong-headed in their professional thinking, not to think that they wouldn't get some blowback to the point where they have to embarrass the newspaper by presenting an editor's note of clarification. Hey, it really wasn't us, but, you know, this is what these people are saying. I mean, it's simply not reporting. So we're now into an era where fact-checking is an art of the past. I mean, what do college upcoming journalists think of a mainstream newspaper with such massive reach and past year respectability?
They're going to be habituated to this. They're going to be conditioned to the fact that these rules don't count. Ed, I want you to imagine this. Imagine I were to appraise a diamond, and here is my appraisal. But at the top of the appraisal, I write, don't believe the appraisal. I don't know what I'm doing. The people that appraise your diamond, I don't vouch for them, but here's your appraisal. This is the part of this that doesn't make any sense. Ed, how many times? Where is the Russian propaganda? I'm dying to see it. Every time they show me it's here, it's not here. Where?
And there's no one ever quoted, absolutes have left the building. That's pretty much where we are. And it is very damaging to people that the Washington Post basically became a pariah in this and became a vehicle for misguiding the American public on many fronts. Lionel, great to have you with us tonight. I appreciate your time. Thanks so much.